Max Verstappen really in the title fight as Formula One heads to Singapore, the only track on the calendar the Dutchman has not won at? And what will happen in the next episode of the McLaren soap opera? And how much do drivers really lose in body weight through sweat at this night race? We'll discuss all that and more in this episode of Inside the Piranha Club. I'm Rebecca Clancy.
And I'm Ben Hunt.
And shall we start with Max?
We should.
The last man to win in a Ferrari?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was quite a good weekend. It was really interesting, him turning up and competing in the GT3 class, having now got his licence, and not only competing but winning. And of course all the attendance, wasn't it, in the Nordschleife, like
50,000.
Massive attendance, more than they get for the sort of 24-hour races there. He really does have that star appeal. Fantastic. It's almost going back to the days of old when all the Formula One drivers used to do other categories, used to racing Formula 2 or the Mille Miglia and just go and jump from one series to the next. And I just thought, wow, that's really cool that he's done that.
Do you think that's what the mother of his very young baby thought?
What, the fact that on a weekend off he's gone racing?
He's gone racing again. Bet she was delighted.
I don't know. I think she was there though, wasn't she?
Okay, fair enough.
I think she was.
Yeah.
Look, I think it's fascinating. I often talk about how Formula One World Champions should transcend the sport and promote motorsport generally, and of course by doing this he's doing so, and I think that's great. He's shining a light on another championship, one that doesn't usually get much attention. That is fantastic. So that's really good, and I know he's doing it because he's got the passion of racing, but generally he's helping out motorsport, so that's a big plus for me. And
also you can't underestimate the importance of the amount of money those fans brought to the track that day, and how much some of these tracks, even the Nordschleife, how much money that these tracks need to operate to stay open. And so it was very cool. But back to the day job, the £80 million a year day job. Singapore, this is the real test, isn't it? So give you a couple of stats, shall I?
Go on,
he's currently 69 points behind Oscar Piastri, the championship leader, with 6 races to go. We are heading to Singapore, as I said. It's a high downforce track, which traditionally hasn't suited Red Bull. The last high downforce track we went to was Hungary, where Verstappen finished 9th. But all of that was before he had his back-to-back wins and where we are now.
Yeah, never won there. Incredible to think that that's the case.
It's amazing, isn't
it? Sebastian Vettel had success there. It's not really a thing that just doesn't suit Red Bull. I'm just not sure why it doesn't suit Verstappen. I
thought you were digging out Vettel then, saying he's not a very good driver. If even Vettel can win there. No,
I don't mean it that way. I mean, in a sense, it wasn't really a circuit that Red Bull struggle with. For whatever reason, Max just hasn't made it count. Last year he was second, but he was miles behind Lando Norris. If you remember, I think Lando was almost 22 seconds, something like that. Maybe I think it was the largest winning margin that we'd seen for a very long time. There's a bit of a hoodoo there, but of course, as we've seen with Max, he likes to prove us wrong in these situations, and if he were to win it, that would be, he'd won every race on the calendar, so that would be, hugely impressive.
It's amazing that this is the only track that he hasn't won at, though. That does slightly blow my mind, given talking about the other tracks that are high downforce. He still won there. This Red Bull is so much more resurgent. We're saying coming off back-to-back wins at a time when McLaren aren't necessarily great. We've got an 83% chance of a safety car based off the last 6 races.
Yeah.
So this is really that track. It's very tight, very twisting, completely unforgiving, and anything can happen here, as we saw in 2017.
Yes, it can. And I remember doing an article once before, Bert Molander, I did an interview with him because off the grid, it was probably about 5 years ago now, but off the grid, he was the driver that had led the most amount of laps, obviously being the safety car driver, and it was quite interesting just how much we're reliant upon the safety car in this circuit more so than anywhere else. So it does tend to throw things up. Teams have got to be able to respond accordingly, and strategy's key. And of course, the weather, anything can happen. When
Well,
it rains there, it rains. And of course, the other thing we forgot to mention is kimono dragons, or whatever they're called, that come on the track.
yes. You talk about strategy. Part of that, it's normally a one-stopper. It's not normally the most exciting race, which I say with a heavy heart because I adore this one. Probably one of the favourites. Many people would class this as their favourite to go to. Slightly bizarre because you stay on European time. You don't really see a lot of sunlight. But you do have a lot of fun. But to go back to strategy, they've increased the pit lane speed from 60 kilometres an hour to 80 kilometres an hour. That means pit stops should be about 6 seconds faster. The idea being that it will push the teams into maybe doing a two-stopper, which would certainly be the case if we do end up seeing a safety car.
Yeah, I'm kind of mixed about this sort of stuff. I like the fact that Formula One experiments and changes the rules, but I just don't like when it's so artificial. And it's always about forcing an extra pit stop. I would like to see changes made to encourage overtaking, or something on track rather than a strategy call. So yeah, I'm a bit mixed about it. Let's see how it plays out. Let's see how many drivers take advantage of that increase in speed.
I mean, I get you. I'd love to see more action on track, but also I love the strategy side of it. People who've listened to this podcast before will have heard me say that. I think it is part of the racing. I think it is a really important part of the racing. We have seen McLaren make a couple of mistakes. We've seen Ferrari make a couple of mistakes. Red Bull generally are very good at their strategy, and I think it is part of the racing. So I quite again, like you, I'm a big fan of the fact that F1 try these things. It is slightly artificial, but I think you have to do something about Singapore because it's always a one-stopper. It's always pretty boring. You can't really overtake here. The walls are so close. Something had to be done. So let's see how it goes.
Yeah, usually pole is key, isn't it? The winner usually goes on. I think from memory, last couple of races, it's the pole sitter that's gone on to win.
Yeah, well, Lando Norris got pole last year and then he had a very dominant victory, didn't he?
Yeah.
So, certainly was the case. And actually, I can tell you, it was Carlos Sainz in 2023. He was on pole and went on to win. So, yes, it does seem to work out that way. Quick question with Ferrari. Yeah. Talking of Ferrari, Carlos Sainz just made me think of it. Do you think we'd see Max Verstappen do Le Mans for Ferrari?
Well, I think that would be pretty political, wouldn't it?
Is it not already political?
I don't think at this level. I think GT class is sort of under the radar enough. Ferrari are happy with the arrangement that he's using their road cars, and there's some sort of relationship. But I think that the more that we get involved in this Ford Red Bull project, could we have Ford versus Ferrari?
Ford versus Ferrari. That's what we want.
I think that it would be too political to see him driving for Ferrari at Le Mans. What would the car look like with Red Bull sponsorship? It wouldn't be a red Ferrari, would it? I don't know. I think too many factors at play there.
Okay. Well, you talk about politics, which brings us nicely on to McLaren. What is going on there? So for anyone who can't remember Baku last time out, Oscar Piastri, 3 mistakes, very uncharacteristic of him. The final one being that he crashed on the first lap and he was out of the race. Lando Norris could not capitalise, only finished 7th. Took just the 6 points out of his lead, so the gap is 25 points. Still a considerable amount, but there are only 6 races to go, so it can still be done. But it does start to feel a little bit like a soap opera.
I think so, just because our attention's been focused and, we're sharp on that area now, looking at the inter-team battle and seeing how it's all going to play out. The championship does seem like it's between those two. I know we said at the top of this podcast, Max Verstappen, could he be in it? Maybe, it's a big points deficit to overturn, but I think that scrutiny will be on McLaren just to see how they manage it. For the best part, I think they've done quite well to manage the two drivers, and I do think that Piastri's mistakes in the last race were notable and interesting, that they came at that when he was leading the championship. Maybe he was trying too hard, or maybe had switched off. I'm not sure what the thought process is, but I do believe that once he had that accident, he had able to process it. He spent that time by the side of the track watching on his phone, and I think that in that short period of time he was able to get it out of his system, and I would fully expect him to be back on the pace this weekend.
Yeah, he is pretty ruthless, isn't he? Lando Norris does love this track as well. As we said, he won here last year. Well, I should also clarify 6 races plus 3 sprints still to go. Thankfully, not in Singapore, although next year it is at Singapore for reasons unknown to anyone. Money. But Lando Norris, he's got to be feeling confident coming into this one, hasn't he? I mean, even off the back of a fairly poor Baku by his standard, I mean, he should have been much, if not winning it, because Max Verstappen absolutely deserved the win last time out in Baku and was completely dominant all weekend. Yeah. But he should have been on the podium, shouldn't he?
Yeah,
I mean, no offence to Carlos Sainz and the Williams, but that should have been Lando Norris.
He should have been. Norris should have probably been there on that podium, but wasn't able to make it count. And I think that he should be watching videos back of last year. I mentioned before the fact that he won so well, and it was a really good, solid weekend for him, all throughout. So I think that a bit of motivation watching those videos would go down well. He should capitalise this weekend. Let's see, he's still playing catch up in the championship. I think that we've spoke a lot on the last couple of podcasts about his mental approach, and it'll be interesting to see this weekend how he sort of approaches things and whether he's able to bounce back after what was ultimately a disappointment in Baku.
What did you think of his Vogue cover shoot?
Bold. It's not something I would have done if I was him. I don't know how much.
Never called you up, Ben.
Well, I know it's true. If I was him, I said, but
timing is odd.
I don't know how much pushback they have on the outfits and the staging.
But don't you think it's distracting while he's in a title fight and really
they could have
properly
been
in a
done
title
ages
fight?
ago. They could have been done ages ago.
Yeah, but
I'm not sure. I mean, they could have been done over the winter, but who knows?
I mean, it definitely wasn't done over the winter, was it? Wasn't that?
Well, I don't know.
Because it's got the interview to go with it.
Yeah, sure. But the pictures could have been done, is what I was saying. But no, I don't. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, I mentioned before about Max transcending Formula One and approaching different categories. This is someone that's appealing to different demographics and age groups and whatnot, and that's great for the sport. But I just think some of those images, quite. But I'm old, so it's not really for me, is it?
We've said this. We've known Lando quite a long time, and he's quite a shy person, believe it or not. Like when you sit with him, he's quite sort of closed off. And actually, if you watch the behind the scenes video, that was very much the sort of Lando that we know, where he feels a bit silly and he kind of does it. He holds the pose for about a second and a half, and then he kind of bursts out in laughing again. And so I actually thought the behind the scenes was quite funny and gives you quite a nice insight into him as well. And as Miles, our producer, does point out, Lewis does do Vogue as well. And I'm not saying it's an issue. I don't have an issue with drivers doing Vogue at all. It was more just the timing of it. You would expect their concentration to be fully on the title fight. But then also, Lewis Hamilton went off and did his absolutely mad trip around the world before 2018 Singapore. And then still to this day, I think, his best ever quali lap. It was utterly breathtaking watching the onboard of his lap. If you've never seen it, I would very much encourage you to go to YouTube or wherever you watch your videos and watch it. And particularly watch the onboard because you worked this out, didn't you, when you were at the Sun?
Yeah. I can't remember what it was, but I did the distance.
We were in Europe.
7 countries in 6 days, and he had gone backwards and forwards to.
He'd been to like New York, to Shanghai.
Yeah.
He'd been in London.
Yeah.
He'd been
Monaco.
whatever European it was. And then he arrived in Singapore, and we were all giving him a bit of grief for it on the Thursday. And he was like, nah, don't worry about it. And he looked tired on the Thursday, I remember it. And he was like, no, it'll be fine. And then he pulled that out on Saturday, and it was utterly phenomenal. And then he went on to win it.
We were stunned, weren't we? It really was. I mean, there was nothing that he couldn't do at that period of time. He was absolutely a force of nature.
I remember even, do you remember we spoke to Tosa Wolff on the Sunday night, and I remember even he was in shock. On the Saturday night, sorry, even he was in shock.
Yeah.
I just couldn't believe it. So, it was a good one.
We should talk about Lewis, shouldn't we? About poor old Roscoe.
Oh, my goodness, my heart broke.
Yeah, I wonder how he'll be feeling this weekend. He is an emotional person. No children, but obviously the Roscoe was like a son, child to him. The way that he looked after him, and I mean, the European
races, he really was in the paddock all the time. I mean, he was never far away.
Yeah.
Very sad if you don't know Lewis Hamilton's dog. I think he was 14. He died at the weekend. He had 2 at one point. Coco was a good few years ago now. I remember saying to him, I'm so sorry about Coco, and he was like, oh, he almost couldn't talk about it. And then this time round, he was saying, he's been very open about it, actually. It was a very Lewis approach, I thought, to it. He is normally very open, as you say, emotional. And he was saying it's the first time he's ever had to have an animal put down. And I completely know that feeling. I had my cat put down 5 years ago, and I still don't want to talk about it. It's heartbreaking. It really is utterly, utterly heartbreaking. But these drivers aren't like us. So he will put the visor down, and he will be Lewis Hamilton, the race driver. Like, they don't operate like the rest of us. Their ability to compartmentalise is utterly astonishing.
Yeah. I expect to see a professional Hamilton this weekend, but I do think it will still be an emotional one nonetheless. So, one to watch.
What do you think? He'll have a Roscoe on his helmet or something? That would
Possibly,
be quite nice.
Yeah. There might be some tribute, yeah.
Yeah, and also I thought it was lovely how many of the other teams and drivers were sending their best wishes. And also, talking of transcending the sport, I've only realised this at the weekend. I probably should have known this earlier. Lewis Hamilton has more followers on Instagram than F1 itself. So there you go. Talk about transcending.
Yes.
And his post with the most likes is him announcing Roscoe's death. So
really,
maybe there is some. Well, one of the most likes. I didn't bother scrolling the whole way back.
I would have thought the Ferrari one would have been high.
I didn't go that far back. I mean, this is surface. I surface researched this, but it was more just the point that it was lovely. People kind of, sending their love and best wishes, and actually, maybe social media can be a nice place sometimes.
Yeah. I remember his post. I've just come across it as research for my book, but I've been gone, now I'm back. Do you remember that one? The silence after Abu Dhabi 21, and of course, I remember that post, and I remember the feeling, of everyone like, wow, he's back. It's quite interesting.
Well, we spoke to him, didn't we? Because he was back, and then we had a press conference with him. Yeah. Maybe like a week later or a couple of days later. And in that time, I remember he'd been knighted as well. So he arrived on the call as Sir Lewis Hamilton.
That's right.
And I remember asking him. I said, hi, congratulations on your knighthood. Do we call you Sir Lewis now? And I remember he just absolutely burst out laughing, and he was like, oh yeah, love it, Sir Lewis, Sir Lewis. And he was like, actually, no, please just call me Lewis.
Well, it's interesting because sometimes there's a little bit of heat on, fan forums. Look at me. I'm too old on social media and whatnot, saying that people should be calling him Sir Lewis each time.
Yeah. No, but I specifically asked him.
Miles, our producer, has got his head in his hands when I said that. Forums. Look, he's just rubbing his face in disbelief. Sorry.
Because we have Sir Jackie, don't we? Sir Jackie Stewart. And some people do insist on it. And I remember Andy Murray was like, please, please, please don't use the Sir. And so I thought, you have to. We spoke to Lewis a lot. So I just wanted to check, and he was like, no, please don't. I
think you can do it when you retire. I think it's socially acceptable then, isn't it?
Yeah, but also, I think we've known him for quite a long time, and he's not really like that. He was very honoured, and he spoke about how honoured he was and how amazing it was. But yeah, it was. He was like, no, it's fine. I'm just Although I'm still not sure I agree with people getting knighthoods while they're still in their sporting career. But that's Do you?
No, I do. I do think he should, because he's the Union flag. Has been, oh God, listen to me, God,
Union Jack?
With these, no, well, wait, is it the Union flag or the Union Jack? And
we have seriously digressed in this podcast. If you're still listening, well done.
We have, and obviously flag waving is a big topic of conversation elsewhere. But I think that from a UK perspective, every time that he's been on the podium and the national anthem's been played, all those times for not just. Well, I was going to say constructor as well at McLaren, but what am I talking about? The fact that
the accent and he's moved to Monaco and people questioning his Britishness.
But I do think though, if you're an ambassador for the country, if you're racing under that flag, every time it's seen and heard, then obviously you're doing something for your country.
Yeah, so it was better than Sports Personality of the Year, where they didn't even include him in the list because he didn't win the 8th title.
Yeah, British bias, here we go again.
British bias, here we go, I know. Well, on that note, shall we move on to Ferrari?
Right.
Well, we could talk about Lewis Hamilton, can't we? He's the only person to have stood on the top step for Ferrari this year, albeit at a sprint race, which I am almost certain neither Hamilton nor Ferrari actually consider a win. Double retirement in Zandvoort, disappointment in Monza. Baku was lots of terrible, questionable strategies and just messing up which way round drivers was. They're heading for and I mean this as a proper race, winless season. What is going on at Ferrari? Neither of them seem happy.
Yeah, winless season, a proper,
Proper winless of
season
the
with
Sunday
no
race.
GP win, yeah. Yeah, that is big, isn't it?
They haven't even looked in contention.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most
That's the worrying
disappointing
bit.
thing. I mean, this year was always a building year, wasn't it? With regards to a new driver coming in, end of regulations, getting ready for 26. That's the narrative. But ultimately, there weren't too many changes behind the scenes. They have
Fred not
established,
new anymore as
no,
team principal.
established team base that they should have been putting themselves into contention for more podiums and more wins. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, you say they're building for 2026. If they don't come out of the blocks in sort of March firing, then the questions are only going to get worse, aren't they? I mean, there's already been questions about Fred Vasseur's future. Yeah. He then ended up signing a contract extension. But it doesn't feel like a happy camp, does it?
It just doesn't feel like it's... I'm not sure about happy, but it doesn't feel like it's making progress. I think that's probably the biggest concern. It doesn't seem to be moving forward. On paper, that driver lineup should have been good. They should complement each other. Like I said, it's a steady ship, and everyone knows their job within that team. And operationally, they seem to have got a bit better, but they're still not challenging for wins. Why is that? I think that should be the biggest concern, and that really does need to be addressed now before we get into 26.
Yeah, and they have quite similar driving styles as well. So I don't know how much they're leaning on each other, but it doesn't feel like a lot at the moment. Let's get into Singapore because it is a night race, a street race. 1,600 lights will be letting the drivers know where they're going around this circuit. Yeah. It is incredibly physically taxing. Probably, well, it used to be the most taxing of the year, and then Qatar came along. What are you going to say?
No. This is definitely more taxing than Qatar.
Well, apart from that 1 year.
In 1 year, the heat. I mean, there's no runoff here. I think the only one that comes close to this is the Saudi Corniche street circuit,
which is
because
really
that's
fast,
high speed
fast.
and walls and everything else. But it's just the time of the year. With this, it's still quite warm, isn't it?
Yeah, so drivers can expect to lose somewhere around 3 kilos in body weight through sweat, just to give you some kind of idea. As I said, 83% chance of safety car, which actually sometimes is quite a good respite because this race does tend to run to the full 2 hours. We have seen a lot of rain in Singapore. As you said earlier, Ben, when it rains, oh my goodness, it is cats and dogs. I probably can't say that on this episode, having just spoken about Hamilton. But it is absolutely ferocious. You step outside and you are soaked to the bone in about 3 seconds. They don't last long. They're flash showers usually. But we saw in 2017, wasn't it? We had that amazing start. Big pile up. I'm not saying crashes are amazing, by the way, but it was just a quite extraordinary start that we saw. We had a bit of rain in 2022. So the weather can really mix things up. And annoyingly, and I say this because this is normally a boring race, the chances of rain for Sunday do seem to be diminishing every single time I wake up. But there's still a chance.
There is still a chance. And the reason why weather is so important is not just because you've got the tyre strategy, but obviously every time that it rains, it takes away the level of grip. Grip is so important at this track because you've got the walls. So, you're constantly dealing with a moving playing field, and I think that's the struggle that the drivers have. You start to build up confidence in the car, you keep the settings, and then obviously you go into the next session, and of course it might have rained, and the level of grip is totally different, and your braking point changes and everything else. It's tricky to manage, and I think that is going to be a factor all weekend. It's what we love about the sport and what obviously this circuit brings, like no other with regards to that. So, I'm excited. I think it's going to be good.
Humidity hits about 90% here, and the question you can absolutely guarantee the drivers will be asked in media day in Singapore is, how do you prepare for this race? Which they get asked every year.
Yeah,
my favourite answer is still Bottas's, who takes his spin bike into his sauna, very Finnish, because there's no other way to really train your body for this.
No, I mean, Nico Rosberg once put a sanitary towel on his head under his helmet to soak the sweat up. And do you remember George Russell 1 year? I can't remember what race that was, but he was saying that it was raining, but it was sweat coming off his forehead and hitting his visor. I think that the physios now and the personal trainers have it all down to a bit of a fine art. There is the heat chamber training sessions.
Yeah.
I think that most drivers know what they're going into, and they also take those supplements, don't they? Which I don't know what they're called, but they store water in your body. You know, every time you have a drink, and what are they called?
Like the electrolytes.
Yeah, and basically they don't go to the toilet for about 4 days, and then they
Like
keep
the opposite of a diuretic.
Yeah, keep all the water inside, and then obviously sweat it out, which accounts for why they lose so much in weight. So most of that is now all down to science. Sometimes they still don't take water bottles. The majority do. But by the end of the first lap, that's hot water or hot fluid, which isn't very nice to drink, I can imagine, when you're already hot. So
I remember Carlos Sainz, 23 he won, and he was saying that he basically didn't have any water for the whole race because he tried to take a sip after about 2 laps and it was like tea.
Yeah.
And he said it was absolutely disgusting, and he said it was worse to drink it than to have it. So then you just have, and also it's weight, right? So they don't want that. But talking of which, this year, once it gets above 31 degrees, which it basically always is in Singapore, the drivers have an option. They were going to make it mandatory, but they've now given drivers the option of wearing these cooling vests. The reason it's optional is because some of the drivers, believe it or not, it's already quite claustrophobic in these cockpits, given how tightly they're strapped in. The vests obviously allow for even less space, and they basically have tubes all around it with coolant running through them to keep their body temperature down. Mm-hmm. If they choose not to wear the vest, they have to add 0.5 kilos of ballast to the car, because obviously weight is very important. The lighter you are, the faster you go. But obviously there's a minimum weight. So it is optional, as I say. Whether or not it will work, it'll be very interesting to see who actually does wear it.
Yeah.
We won't find out until, I think they'll try a few practice sessions and then see kind of how they get on. There isn't a sprint this weekend. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see who does choose it.
Yeah, it was billed as air conditioning, wasn't it? I remember.
Yeah.
Air conditioning for a Formula One car. But yeah, I mean, essentially it is a cool vest that's pumping cool air through. I mean, for me, it makes sense, but I'm not a Formula One driver. So,
If you've ever been strapped into a Formula One car, it's claustrophobic enough as it is, and I'm not claustrophobic. So, I'm not sure what I would choose. But to go back to the sweat, I'm actually reading Andre Agassi's autobiography at the moment. I'm probably the last person in the world to actually get around to reading it. It's absolutely fantastic. But he's talking about how he sweats loads. And he did sweat loads when he was playing, and his trainer would basically start hydrating him like days before a match.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's the same sort of thing with Singapore, isn't it? I remember speaking to a couple of the drivers about it, and they're like, "Yeah, we've been hydrating since like we got on the plane to come here." Talking of which, and this is I'm going to call him out here. Did you see the video of George Russell going to the Mercedes garage? There was traffic, and so he ended up just getting out of his car and walking because he was late.
No, I thought you talked about the picture of him on the plane, which I shuffled out.
Well, this is what I am going to take because he arrived wearing on the picture on the plane. He's wearing the same outfit, and I thought, don't you get changed?
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah,
clearly not. No, but you need a comfy outfit for the plane. I mean, maybe it's different when you're in business.
Yeah, maybe, and yeah, who knows?
Yeah, well, okay. Any other business?
We're back on fashion again.
I know we've seen Vogue and calling out George Russell for not getting changed for going on a plane. 13 hours is a long old schlep. Any other business?
No, not that I can think of. Cadillac's plans are shaping up.
Fittipaldi just named as the
reserve driver, so that's another good signing for them. Again, someone that I would imagine that Graham Loudon knows very well. Having worked with him in the past, and so that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, good for them.
Williams looked pretty set on that 5th place in the constructors after those big hauler points from Carlos Sainz.
That's looking good.
And then the rest of the field is a bit
Yeah. Still big questions of Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso's.
Surely solely focusing on 26 now.
Yeah.
Otherwise Andy Cowell is in trouble.
Well,
the team principal.
Yeah.
EO and team principal, as they like to call themselves nowadays.
We've obviously got media day later on today, so that'll throw up some of the talking points for the weekend, I hope. Let's see how we go.
Yeah, this is definitely one to watch. And of course, as ever, we will be back on Monday to review all of the shenanigans, messing around, the politics, the drama of sure there certainly will be some. But until then, if you have liked this podcast, please do rate and review us. If you are so inclined to watch rather than listen, you can get us on YouTube as well. Everything is under @Inside the Piranha Club. But until next time, have a good weekend.
Thank you.